you guys all having me. When I got a phone call from your teacher, I was very excited to visit the school. I do believe education is one of the most important things that we as a people can pursue. So I do appreciate you having me. I like to keep all my notes in my head, keep it organized. I'm not a very organized person in my office, so I like to keep all my important stuff in my head. How are you doing today? Good. That's very well. Well, I would like to take the opportunity to get to know you a little bit and myself, let you get to know me. When your teacher asked me to come speak to you, I jumped at the opportunity. Now, I love to get into the minds of young individuals and young Americans and future voters that may be out there. Well, one of the things I like to talk to the youngins about is not necessarily me as the president. Most of you know that I was president of the United States, 16th president. I heard somebody whisper over there. Very well done. Is that you? I was the 16th president of the United States, but that's not really why I'm here. I don't care to talk to you about that. What I would like to tell you is how I got to that point, how I became the man that I was. As I like to say, the man beneath the hat, and who I became in the process. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life and who I was when I was young. Most people don't really know about that, and I like to educate people on that. So if you don't mind, I'd like to tell you a few stories, if that's okay. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. Sure.
Thank you. Well, as you know, my name is Abraham Lincoln. That is my full name. I have no middle name. That was my full name when I was born. I was named after my great-grandfather. He was sadly killed by a raid by some Native Americans. But I was named after him, and I was born to Thomas, was my father's name, and Nancy was my mother's name. I bet you didn't know this. My mother was actually the best wrestler in her town when she grew up. She was the strongest wrestler in her town. She actually wrestled with the boys. Wrestling was something we did back then. I actually got a lot of my wrestling skills from her. I was the best wrestler in my town when I was growing up as well. I had an older sister. Her name was Sarah. I had a younger brother. His name was Thomas. He was named after my father. Sadly, he passed away when he was just a baby, just after he was born. So we never got to see him grow up. We lived in Hardin County, Kentucky, for a couple of years, and then we moved to a different farm in Kentucky. My father had issues. He had a lot of problems with claiming land. He claimed he owned the land, but he could never provide the legal documentation. And so we moved around a lot. When I was about 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old, we moved to Indiana. A little farm in southern Indiana, Knob Creek Farm. And on that farm, I actually helped my father at a very young age split rails to build our log cabin. I helped him by hand build our log cabin that we would live in at a very young age. At this time, that was about the time I'd say that summer, my great aunt, my great uncle, and my cousin, they came to live with us. The Sparrows. The Sparrows came to live with us, and my oldest cousin, Dennis. Dennis was about 21 at the time. He became a big brother to me, and he taught me a little bit of reading and a little bit of writing and whatever he could, and helped me learn how to hunt. I was really excited to learn how to shoot a rifle and hunt. But the first time I shot a bird, I shot a turkey, and I saw the blood, and I never wanted to see blood again. I refused to ever pick up a rifle and hunt ever again. It was a little too much for me. But he was a good brother to me. It actually reminds me of a funny story. We were out, in the barn, working with one of the horses, and a horse plum kicked me right in the forehead. I was unconscious in seconds. I came to and couldn't speak at first. They thought I damaged my brain. They thought I would never speak again. And about 20 minutes later, I actually regained my speech, and I had no permanent damage, luckily. Dennis never let me forget about that. He made fun of me all the time for that. But Dennis and I, we were very close. My sister, she would teach me how to read and write every now and then as well. I did attend some school. I went to what was called a blab school. Do you know what a blab school is? A blab school is kind of hard to explain. If you don't mind, I'd like to show you, if that's okay. Would you mind helping me out with that?
Yes.
Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to explain. Now, blab school, we had kids, youngins from real little all the way up to the older fellas. They were every age in between. And so what the schoolmaster would do is he'd bring us into the schoolroom and he'd split us up into sides, much like you guys are now. And so on this side, you would have, the little ones. You guys, would you pretend to be the little ones for me? Is that okay? This is what I want you to do. I want you to repeat after me. Well, you don't need to repeat. You know your alphabet, right? Okay, we're going to say our alphabet. And when we get to the end, we're just going to keep going. All right, so here we go. A, B, C, D. Keep going. E, F, G. Now, while the little ones were saying their alphabet, the schoolmaster would come over here with the ladies, and we would do arithmetic. W, X, you guys know arithmetic. Yes, sir. So, you guys, 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 1 plus 2 is 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. 1 plus 4 is 5. 1 plus 5 is 6. 1 plus 6 is 7. 1 plus 7 is 8. 1 plus 2 R S T U. That was good. That was good. We would do that for a few hours a day. That's what we would do all day long. We would recite our alphabet while we do some arithmetic. And that's what a blab school is. We would just blab and blab and blab and blab. And that's how we learn our letters and our arithmetic. I went to the blab school for a little bit of time. Well, my father didn't really believe in education very much. He felt it was a waste of time. He felt that education was wasted, and that the only way to really be successful was to do work and work a farm and make money that way. Education was just going to be a waste, and you're not going to do anything with it. So he actually pulled me out of school. In all, in my entire life, I went to school for about 1 year. That's about all the schooling I ever got. Everything else I did, I learned on my own. I taught myself. I would read books. I used to love to read the Bible. I used to love to read Aesop's Fables. That was one of my favorites. I used to read Shakespeare when I got older. I loved to read Julius Caesar. It's one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. And the only way I could get my hands on books is by going to the neighbors a few miles down the road. I would go to their houses and I would ask them if I could help them, do with their farming work. I would ask them if I could help them with, anything around their house, splitting rails, working on their homes. And instead of for money, I would ask them for books. And I would get any books I could get. And I would read and I would read and I would read and get as much information as I could. Because I believe it. Actually, there was one time, I'll tell you another story. One time my father sent me out to do some work out on the farm. I was supposed to do some plowing. I was out there plowing. And I kind of got tired of doing that, so I grabbed my book out of my back pocket. I went and sat under the tree and I started reading. Well, my father came out there and he caught me reading, and he gave me a whooping for reading that book. And he took that book away from me. But I didn't let it stop me. I believed that there was something to that reading. I wanted to read and I wanted to learn. So I would continue to work for books throughout my childhood. When I was about 8 or 9, a really evil thing came through our farm in Indiana called the milk sickness. Now, the milk sickness is a disease that you get from cow milk. If cows eat what's called the white snake root plant, it poisons the milk inside them. It doesn't hurt the cow, but it poisons the milk. And if a person were to drink that milk, it could give them a really high fever. And it makes your tongue swell up, and your tongue gets coated in a really white, milky film. And then the fever takes you, and you pass away. There was no cure for it. Well, the milk sickness came through our little area. My aunt and uncle, they passed away. They got really sick and passed away from the milk sickness. It was really difficult for our family. Well, we thought we were through it. And a couple weeks later, my mother got the milk sickness. So when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I watched my mother pass away. I was sitting at her bedside. It was a very hard time for me. It's still pretty hard to talk about. Now, after my mother passed away, it was sometime my sister took over the duties around the house and cooking and cleaning, taking care of us. Well, my father decided it was about time to remarry about a year later. He decided there needed to be another mother in the house. He went and married another young lady named Sarah, just like my sister. And she was amazing. I loved her until the day she passed away. She believed in my education and she wanted me to go to school. She encouraged me to go to school. So I actually got to go back to school for a little while until my father brought me back again. But she encouraged me to read and she encouraged me to continue my education. And I loved her for it. When I was about 20 years old, my father decided we needed to move to Illinois. Indiana wasn't right for us anymore, so we packed our stuff up. We moved the family to a little town south of Illinois, just outside a place called New Salem. And I helped them set up their new cabin and get everything settled. And about that time, I decided I need to go off on my own. I'd been living with my family for long enough.